How many questions did he get right? So what we're going to set up here is we're going to set up a proportion. We're going to start with what we don't know. And in algebra, we usually use x if we don't know something. So we don't know what he got out of 30. So we write that as a proportion. We don't know what score he got out of 30. We do know that he got 90%. Can you write 90% as a fraction? 90 over 100. And what we just set up was a proportion. These proportions have to be the same because what he got out of 30 is equal to 90%. And now we've set up an equivalent fraction one that we were solving before. We've done this in two different ways. We did a pattern way and we did an algebraic way. How do we go about solving this for the algebraic way? We want to figure out x. Right now it's divided by 30. Opposite of dividing by 30? Multiply by 30. So if you would multiply both sides by 30, these 30s would simplify. And type it into your calculator. 90 divided by 100 times 30. And you'll get 27. The pattern way at the beginning does not look like it's going to work very well. Because if you want to go to find out what x is, and you think, what would I have to do to 100 to get to 30? It's not a nice number. You can't, it's like dividing by 3 and a little, yeah, it's not nice at all. So, the pattern way at first doesn't seem to work. And that's why it's nice to have the algebraic method. Because if you look at the pattern and you can't see a nice number to divide by, then you won't be able to figure it out. Pattern ways could still work in this one if you said to yourself, well, I could reduce 90 over 100. Can you see that 90 over 100 could reduce to 9 out of 10? Yes. So if we reduced it to 9 out of 10, because that's the same, it's an equivalent fraction to 90 over 100, now you might be able to see a pattern thing. Is there a way that I can go from 10 to 30? Times by 3. And if I times 9 by 3, I'm going to get 27 that way as well. So the pattern way could still work, but in this case, the pattern way took an extra step. And our algebra way would have worked right away. So here's our first example with percentages and proportions. Here's our second example. A shirt costs $19.20 on sale. The shirt was 20% off. What was the original price? This one's harder to set up the proportion because we're going to have to use the percent decrease, and in fact we're going to use the shortcut part of that percent decrease that we used in our previous examples. We're going to first set up a proportion. We're going to put our price on sale is $19.20, and what we don't know is how much it was originally. But we can make that a proportion. By the way, which number is going to be bigger, the 1920 on the top or the x on the bottom? The X on the bottom, because the 1920 was the price on sale. Okay? Now this makes a proportion, and we're told that this proportion is what happens after 20% was taken off. If 20% is taken off, how much is left? 80%. So this fraction here has to equal 80%, because 20% has been taken off. So the hard part in a question like this is this right now, is setting up the proportion. So we've got here is our sale item, and here is our original one. And our original one was 100%, and our sale one is 80% of the total. Now, algebraically, a review. How did we solve these ones where the X was on the bottom? We had an extra step. We flip it first. So we flip both of our fractions. That still makes the fractions equivalent. And now our X is being divided by 1920. So for our algebra, multiply both sides by 1920. And take out our calculator. 100 divided by 80 times by 1920. I think you get 24. Is that right? Yeah? Awesome. Yes?
If you weren't giving us like the fractions and stuff, could you just do like 10% of 1920 twice and get the original?
Well, the tough part of doing 10% of 1920 is when it was 20% off, the 20% off would have come from this original $24. So 10% of 24 is $2.40, and 20% is $4.80. Whereas if you did the 20% off the 1920, you'd only take $1.92 and add it twice. So it won't quite work out that way, because when the percentage off comes, it comes off of the original price. But yeah, it's very tempting to just add 20% of 1920 onto it. But this is an interesting thing, because this happened here. I'll add a new screen here. This has happened before. You're getting a wage. Your employer says, we're in a really tough time right now. I have to decrease your wages by 20%, which really sucks. But after I do that for 2 weeks, don't worry, after 2 weeks, our business will be in a better place. I'll increase it back by 20%. So this is what we have to do, and if you don't like it, you can quit, but this is what happens. So you're making $10 an hour. It's not a great job, but I use 10 because it's going to be easy to figure out. If we take 20% off of $10, that would be $2. And so now you're only making $8 an hour, which isn't even legal because it's lower than minimum wage, right? But we'll just use this as an example. We'll say the example happened 20 years ago. So they took 20% off your wages. You worked for 2 weeks at only $8 an hour. 2 weeks come up and your boss says, don't worry, I'm going to add 20% now. Well, now 20% of $8 is only $1.60. So if someone takes off 20% and then adds 20%, a lot of people would think that would get back to the same thing. But if they take 20% off 10, that's a bigger number, $2. Adding 20% to 8 would only get you back to $9.60. So not only have you lost money in those 2 weeks, when you supposedly got back to normal, you're not making as much as you did before either. So that's also showing why in the question that we just did, you can't just take 20% of 1920 and add it on, because you won't get the original price. So we have to set up a proportion that our price, our sale price over the original, is 80 over 100 because 20% has been taken off. And so these ones with the proportions will take a little bit of time to get used to setting up. 2 more of these, and then we're going to go into our workbooks. Tim scored 86% on his quiz out of 22. What was his mark out of 22? So I'll let you try to figure this one out, give you some time to try. First of all, we want to check, did you set up the proportion correctly? He had a test out of 22, so we don't know what he scored out of 22. We know that this score is 86%, so it has to equal 86 out of 100. So now we want to find out what x is. We're dividing x by 22. The algebra says opposite of dividing by 22 would be to multiply by 22. These will cancel out. And we go to our calculator, and 86 times 22 divided by 100, or 86 divided by 100 times 22, gives 18.92. So what do you think he scored on his test?
86.3%.
Well,
Like he got 19 out of 22, but since you didn't put a decimal, it came up to
probably he got probably got 19 out of 22. And if you did 19 out of 22, what does it show up as? 86.3, but you'd probably round that. If someone said, how did you do on your test, right? And you got 19 out of 22, you would probably tell your friend, if they asked you, how did you do on your quiz? You'd either tell them, I got 19 out of 22, or if you had the percentage of 86% or 86.36, you'd probably just tell them 86%. You wouldn't tell them, oh, I got 86.363636363636363636, and they'd be like, okay, I get it. You got about 86%. You wouldn't say all those decimal places. And if you did, your friend would probably look at you and say, okay, you might be one less friend at the end of the day. So probably got 19 out of 22. Last one for you to try. So we've got our sale price and our original price. So we have 45 out of 75 is a proportion. If we want to find out what percent that is, because we don't know what percent that is, it would be something out of 100, because that's how we could write a percent. Now, if we figure this out, if we figure out what x is, we can multiply both sides by 100, because we're dividing by 100. That would make our hundreds cancel out. And we get, is it 6? 60? 60 equals x. So if you type that into your calculator, you're going to get 60. So that means if it was 60, if this proportion, 45 out of 75, is 60%, that means that your sale price is 60% of your original price. So again, things to look at. Here was our original, and our original price is 100%. And here is our sale price. So our sale price is the X, and that's 60% of the original price. So what percentage off? It was 40% off.